I'm literally shaking right now because I just had a man approach me in a parking lot and it went fine. And I'm going to tell you why it went fine and how to address it, because it was in a book I read and this is how you're supposed to address it, but it scared me. I'm literally shaking. So this guy, I am alone with my son, by myself, a woman, and a male approached me in a parking lot. He's, "Excuse me, miss," and I don't know why in the hell he was approaching me or what he was trying to do. And before he was probably 30 feet from me when he said, "Excuse me, ma'am." And I turned around and I literally yelled at him and I said, "Do not approach me." And he immediately started going in the other direction. And I just kept saying it over and over and over. I said, "Do not approach me. Do not approach me." And he, of course, got "What the F?" He started cussing and yelling, what's your problem? And I looked at him and he actually then crossed a couple cars down from my car. He didn't come anywhere near me. He crossed a couple cars down from my car and was like, continuing to cuss and say, "What's your problem?" And I said, "You do not approach women in a parking lot." I just kept saying, "Do not approach me. You do not approach women in a parking lot," yelling it. No male should ever approach a woman in a parking lot. Ever. No male should ever approach a woman in a parking lot. And if a male does approach you, you need to turn around and use the strongest voice that you can possibly use with them. Don't be polite. They need to literally screw off. No male should be approaching you in a parking lot.
Have you ever taken a ride in a time machine back to the 1950s? The difference between then and now is like comparing a flip phone to an iPhone. The margin is huge. But here's a question that's been bugging me for a while. Why don't men approach women like they used to? Back then, you had no choice but to muster up the courage to cold approach a woman or meet her father at the church, and hope she wasn't already taken or wasn't secretly a serial killer. Nowadays, you can just swipe left or right in your pajamas and find a date for the night. Talk about taking the easy way out. Back in the day, it took some real effort to win a woman's heart. Women had limited options. They had to choose from the guys in their community or wait for Prince Charming to come riding in on his horse. It was simple, and men had to man up and approach women. But now we have social media, and everyone is connected, yet disconnected at the same time. People don't physically talk to each other anymore, and men are afraid to approach women. I mean, who wants to risk rejection when you can hide behind a computer screen, right? I think this is a topic worth exploring. We need to figure out what happened, and what will happen if this trend continues. Why aren't men approaching women these days? Well, let's take a look at the male psyche. Men are all about assessing risks and consequences before taking action. Just like how they approach marriages, they weigh the risks versus rewards and what they stand to lose if things go south and the woman wants a divorce. It's like playing a game of chess, but with their hearts on the line. Now let's apply this same logic to approaching women. Women have made the process so darn risky and unrewarding. Men already fear rejection and humiliation, so for a guy to risk getting turned down, made fun of, or labeled a creep, he must think the outcome is worth it. But in this society we live in, women view the average man that they don't want as predators, creeps, sexual assaulters, and rapists. Geez, talk about a confidence killer. So, which sane man would still want to approach a woman these days? If the average guy were to approach the average woman respectfully to start a conversation, he'd most likely get humiliated more often than not. It's like walking into a minefield blindfolded, only to find out that the mines are labeled friend zone and creep. No wonder guys are hesitant to make a move. Have you seen those videos of guys trying to talk to women without being disrespectful or creepy, and the woman straight up makes a fool out of him? It's like watching a train wreck in slow motion. She records the whole thing, spins the narrative that he's a creep, and uploads it to social media for laughs and attention. I mean, talk about a confidence killer. I'm sitting here looking at those videos and asking myself, why on earth would I want to approach a woman these days? But let's try to understand why this is happening. Different men get different treatments from women. It's like those times in your life when a dirty homeless person begged you for money and you immediately went on the defensive to not talk to them or give them anything. Yeah, it's like that, but worse. Women have to be extra careful out in the world because they could be taken by a man against their will at any moment. But here's the kicker. A woman out in a public setting with a bunch of people around her still publicly humiliates a man just for talking to her. It's like she's allergic to basic human interaction. So it's safe to assume that modern women don't respect men anymore. If a woman is notorious for disrespecting average and below average men who approach her, do you think she would do the same thing to Jeff Bezos? Of course not. Jeff Bezos is a billionaire with power, authority, and status. That woman wouldn't dare talk down or humiliate a man who's clearly better than she could ever be. It's like trying to insult a superhero. You just can't do it. So at the end of the day, it all boils down to a man's status and perceived value based on how he looks, talks, and approaches a woman. It's like playing a game of who's got more swag. Women will treat different men differently based on how they perceive them. If a man doesn't meet her standards, she'll treat him like trash. But if she perceives another man as better than her, she'll treat him like a king. It's like a messed up version of The Bachelor, only without the rose ceremony. To further understand this, look at the interaction between her and her boss versus the janitor. Right off the bat, we know who wouldn't be disrespected if they were to approach her. It's like trying to talk to a queen when you're just a peasant. You'll get the royal boot in no time. So, what's the verdict? The modern woman no longer respects men, and I think most guys have already figured this out and decided to opt out of talking to these women. They've seen how women treat other men who look like them versus the high-value men, and they're deciding to walk away entirely. Men have come to a realization that women's attitudes towards them are only getting worse and will continue to get worse, and they're not falling for that BS anymore. Whenever they approach women, it's like walking into a minefield blindfolded, only to find out that the mines are labeled dangerous and rejection. They risk their reputation and possibly even their freedom. I mean, have you heard of men getting the police called on them just because they approached a woman who didn't like them? So it's no surprise that men are starting to assess the risks of approaching a woman and realizing that it's just not worth it. Unlike the women in the 90s who were more approachable and less out of order just for a man wanting to start a conversation with them. It's like we're playing a game of what's the worst that could happen? And the answer is always a lot. Now that we've covered that point, let's talk about whether or not modern women are even approachable. To be approached, you have to look approachable, or people will tag you as a creepy man if you approach a woman. But modern women today walk around like they have something stuck up in their rear end. It's like trying to talk to a statue, cold, hard, and unresponsive. It's like they're allergic to basic human interaction. Have you ever seen a woman that you liked, but when she made up her face, it looked like the devil himself? It's like trying to talk to a demon. You're not sure if you'll come out alive. The art of smiling and looking pleasant in public is lost on modern women today. They're walking around with a face that screams, "Don't talk to me." It's like trying to talk to a statue that's been cursed by a witch. So it's no surprise that men are turned off by this. They're not going to approach a woman who looks like she doesn't want anyone talking to her, especially a man. It's like playing a game of don't get rejected or you're a loser. And when you're trying to tell a woman that she should smile, society sees you as a misogynist. It's like trying to talk to a group of angry bees. You're going to get stung. So men have decided not to approach women. If society doesn't care about their sincere opinions as men, why would they take unnecessary risks being ridiculed? And it's not just the angry faces, it's the closed-off body language too. If a guy sees a woman he likes and wants to start a conversation with her, but she looks cold and closed off, he'll assume she doesn't want to talk to anyone. Smiling and looking inviting with open body language is so important, but it's lost on modern women who aren't willing to change. So ladies, you have two choices. Either you give us signals that you're approachable, or you put up an "I don't want to be approached" look, and men will avoid you like the plague. The choice is yours, ladies. And lastly, men have decided that women in relationships aren't even worth it anymore. They've been told, "You're too short. You're ugly. Don't talk to me. I don't like broke guys. Don't talk to me if you don't have X irons." Many men have grown tired of the challenges that come with approaching women. They feel that modern women are now treating men worse than ever before, and that the risks of approaching them outweigh the potential rewards. Men have seen relationships fail, cheating occur, and many other negative outcomes, and they have decided to take a step back and avoid such risks altogether. Instead, men are turning to alternative options like online dating or sugar daddy sites, where they can pay for the company of women without the risk of rejection, humiliation, or false accusations. Men feel that they are no longer willing to invest their time and energy in pursuing relationships that may not be worthwhile. Furthermore, men are becoming more aware of the potential dangers of approaching women in public spaces. False accusations, public humiliation, and even arrest can occur simply for approaching a woman who is not interested. Men are realizing that the risks of approaching women are simply too high. As a result, they are choosing to opt out of the traditional dating game. Ultimately, men are seeking to avoid the potential risks and negative outcomes associated with approaching women. They are choosing to prioritize their own safety and well-being, and they are turning to alternative options that offer greater control and fewer risks. For many men, this means avoiding the traditional dating game altogether and focusing on other areas of their lives. That's all for today on Manhood. Don't forget to smash the like and subscribe buttons, and also click on the notification bell to be the first to know when I drop a new video. If you find value in my videos, you can show your support through PayPal or Cash App. The links are in the description. See you next time. Cheers.